ears, and welcome to my show. I'm your friendly neighborhood librarian, reading the stinkers and praising the masterpieces since 2012. Exploitation. Sadly, in today's culture, that word needs no explanation. It's the stuff of massive blockbusters and reality shows, and even some of our news programs, unfortunately.
They will kill somebody and go have some chicken at KFC.
Exploitation involves taking something bad, like a real-life tragedy, and converting it into entertainment. As much as I'm not a fan of the Hunger Games, there is some sobering social commentary in the Capitol viewing these kids fighting each other to the death as sport. Are we really so far removed from that? Schadenfreude is a thing, and art does imitate life. There's a saying that today's tragedy is tomorrow's joke. I saw a joke the other day about John Wilkes Booth's assassination of President Lincoln.
Hey, who are you supposed to be?
I'm John Wilkes Booth. No.
Give it another 50 years or so and people will be making jokes about / making movies of the Kennedy assassination, or even 9/11. But exploitation doesn't have to happen on a grand scale, nor does it only pertain to visual media. Enter the genre of true crime. True crime novels have been around for quite some time, but they are picking up in popularity. They take a well-known criminal case, usually involving murder, and write an extended news article about it, telling the tragedy of real people in novel format, and getting big bucks for it. Today we're going to take a look at A Need to Kill, Confessions of a Teen Killer by Michael W. Cuneo. Here's what happened. 16-year-old Alec Kreider was best friends with classmate Kevin Haynes. They both did well in school and didn't have any behavioral issues. But one night, out of the blue, Alec stole into the Haynes residence and slaughtered Kevin and his parents. Fortunately, Kevin's sister heard the noises and was able to escape with her life. But her world will never be the same, and Alec Kreider outed himself as a teenage menace. It's written in a way that makes it very easy to understand. The information of the case is all laid out. The back cover boasts that the book contains 8 pages of dramatic photos and chilling excerpts from Alec's diaries. In other words, privacy wasn't expected, but what do you expect from the cutthroat world of journalism? You have to understand that true crime novels are not the same thing as fictionalized accounts of real stories. Like how Les Miserables is a work of fiction that uses a real French Revolution as its backdrop, or how Titanic is a fictional movie that includes a historical event. No, there is nothing fictional about true crime novels. There are no added characters or made-up dialogue. It's strange to me that this true story could be framed in such a way that it could be divided into chapters. This story does follow a literary narrative. It has tension building and a climax and rising action, and it feels wrong.
Are really creepy.
Real life isn't fiction. It doesn't follow a set linear formula. That's why documentaries showcasing people going through tough situations or choices often affect me much more than a movie's depiction of characters going through the same tough situations and choices. In order to psychologically protect ourselves from falling apart at every sad movie or book, we have developed a way to desensitize ourselves. What's so unnerving about a book written about a real case with a fiction formula is that we still emotionally distance ourselves, and to an extent, we're still entertained. 3 real people were stabbed to death by a teenager they're trusted, but the book is written in a way that we're still entertained. You almost feel like it's not real. You feel like a person in the Capitol watching the Hunger Games, and it's kind of sickening. But would this book have even been written if there weren't people at least a little bit entertained in true crime? You could say morbid curiosity, but if that was so, why not just read the news articles? Why seek out the book? No, there must be something deeper going into play here. It's written sort of horror movie-esque with a mystery murder bent. We begin at the night of the murders and then backtrack. The beginning does a good job of showing Maggie Haynes, Kevin's older sister who's just come home from college, experiencing PTSD as a result of being the only survivor of her family's massacre. Her emotions are all over the place, and understandably so. Immediately, you connect with her more than you could any fictional character. It's odd, even though all authors are humans, at least as far as I know, we have set cliches for emotional response, which certain character types have to certain situations. If we write a tough character, we make her yell when she's angry and get flustered when she's emotional. If we have a timid character, they're generally always soft-spoken. But people aren't character types. Now, characters have their place. In a way, they're awesome because they cannot exist on our planes. They're not exactly like us. Humans can't play God. We are incapable of creating other human beings. Just ask Victor Frankenstein. Either one will do. We can create characters who have traits in common with people, who are very realistic, but at the same time they won't be exactly like a living, breathing human being. You know why? Because they were created for the singular purpose of fulfilling a role. They are made to be a protagonist or an antagonist or a sidekick or what have you in a story. People aren't created to fill a role, they just are. They aren't in a story. They're living a life which isn't crafted to have a clear-cut resolution and conflict. When I judge a character, I'm judging them on whether they fulfilled their role. A protagonist must be someone you can root for, not necessarily like, but at least be invested in, want them to succeed. Note, the reader's version of success does not necessarily equate to the character's version of success. If a protagonist fails to grip me, then no matter how I might feel about their traits in a real person, they fail as an effective character. I'm looking at you, Mandy Moore. Antagonist 2. I'm a big fan of Gaston of Disney's Beauty and the Beast fame. He's funny. He's over the top, always looking in the mirror, flexing those muscles, throwing around that masculinity. I see him as ink on a paper drawn by talented animators and voiced by a guy who's intentionally making his voice sound smarmy and hammy and most likely isn't his natural voice. All to bring us this hilarity. And it works. He's the perfect antagonist to Belle. Small-minded to Belle's philosophy. Homebody to Belle's adventure-seeking. Obsessed with appearance, while Belle, even though she's pretty, doesn't give a crap. And stupid as stone to Belle's intellectualism. A story is only as strong as its weakest link.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Each piece must do its job well in order to create a truly good book. But a real person doesn't have to jump through these hoops of development to be endearing and engaging. They just are. Maggie Haynes is written without being glorified or villainized. With no added ruffles, Cuneo simply relays the things she says and does, and it's convincing. We start to find out tidbits about Kevin too, like that he enjoyed participating in his school's quiz bowl, and the Boy Scouts, and that he loved German history. Tom, the father, had rarely gotten angry, worked as manager of a company, and recently had some struggles with prostate cancer. Lisa, the mother, was very quiet and involved in church volunteer work. Things like that are so small, but they are important to make us remember that these people are real. Only after all this do we meet Alec Kreider, Kevin's best friend. Here's where the murder mystery part comes in. Well, kind of. The cover, both front and back, give away who the killer is. But if you were for some reason reading this book without a cover, then you would not know that Alec was the culprit. He's not portrayed as strange or with the telltale signs. He actually seems to grieve, and again, it rings true. In fiction, there are clear signs of bad guys. What's chilling is that sometimes those aren't so clear in real life, as this book demonstrates. The murders don't only affect the family, of course, they affect the whole community. It's interesting to see the effects of mob mentality and paranoia and panic that grow from one grisly crime being committed in a quiet neighborhood where things like this just don't happen. Do you notice that in news stories? When a shocking crime occurs, the neighbors always say that they would never have expected it.
She never expected a man to die in police custody in her neighborhood.
It's really quiet.
People seem to think that it just won't happen to them, and that's faulty thinking because criminals don't just exist in one geographical area. There's no one city or state that is free from it. Still, the Haynes murders are a shock to the system, and you can't really blame anyone for that. This did come right out of nowhere. Almost like a real-life big-lipped alligator moment.
Big-lipped alligator moment.
For most of the book, Alec continues life as a 10th grader while the investigators investigate. In structure, it's very similar to Red Dragon, but with more sincerity, which is odd considering it was made to cash in on a tragedy. Not even an old tragedy either. Nonetheless, you can't write about real people using their quotes without some degree of sincerity leaking into your words. Not to say there wasn't any emotional manipulation, oh no.
It isn't so. No.
The reminders about how good friends Kevin and Alec were are strategically placed. One that really got to me was when Kevin's German teacher was interviewed as part of the investigation, and he brings up a trip abroad that both Kevin and Alec had gone to Germany, and mentions that for Kevin it was an easy choice picking who to room with. I mean, sheesh, knowing what Alec eventually does to Kevin could give you a load of trust issues. And then there are also the subtle reminders of Kevin's tender age that come up frequently. The fact that just next year he would have been able to drive is an unexpected sucker punch to the gut. In part 2 of the book, you start to see Alex's mind unraveling. He calls up his now girlfriend, Caroline, to tell her about his suicidal and homicidal fantasies, and also keep her hostage on the line by saying that if she hangs up before he's ready, he'll kill himself. Apparently, he's fed up with this world.
I'm fed up with this world.
Because all he can feel passion for is killing people. So there's no place in society for him besides behind bars or in a straitjacket. He even says he tried to strangle his younger brother and was unhappy when he didn't succeed. This doesn't go over well. Caroline calls 911. By this point, the police have exhausted their suspects, but Alec shoots himself in the foot by provoking police interest in him again, especially with this talk of murder. He ends up in a psychiatric hospital, and on the day he is to be released, his parents arrive and tell him that Caroline's aunt has decided that Caroline is too young for a serious relationship, and that he and Caroline should just be friends.
Because now I'm in the friend zone. I'm in the friend zone.
That's also reportedly what Caroline wants. Sounds reasonable, right? Not to Alec. When Alec hears that, his self-preservation and will to live seems to just fly out the window, and he confesses to the murders. The hardest part to read is the aftermath. Alec's parents trying to cope, Maggie reeling from the fact that a frequent guest in her home destroyed her family, and of course, the shock of the community. Alec ends up seeming more disturbed than frightening. He can't offer a motive other than a vague, "Kevin was annoying me lately." But at the same time, he's a teenager, and like it or not, there are certain traits that teenagers all share. Like throwing yourself fully into a friendship or relationship, obsessing a little, and feeling like it's the end of the world if it comes to a close. Or his privileged narcissism in his journal, portraying himself as him against the world, a put-upon genius that the world doesn't understand. You remember that phase, don't you, when you thought the only ones who understood you were Simple Plan, and every Simple Plan song matched your life perfectly? No one could understand you because no one has ever been as deep and thoughtful as you, and those close grown-ups don't understand because they've never been teenagers. What were the lyrics that described your profundity again?
Do you lock yourself in your room with the radio
self-righteous, self-aggrandizing, self-martyring crap. Even his peeve of people chewing and swallowing too loudly. I have that too. Now, I wouldn't kill anyone because of it, but I can still see some of myself in Alec. He's a human being, and despite the terrible thing he did, it's impossible just to demonize him. It would be easier, but even Maggie can't bring herself to, and neither can the reader. Would I recommend the book? It's hard to. On the one hand, it is exploiting a tragedy, but on the other, it's an account that rings true of a difficult and thought-provoking subject: kids who kill. True crime will always be around because there are things only nonfiction can teach you. I thought this was written tastefully and with due respect. Bias only comes in at the very end, once the truth about Alec has been revealed. At that point, the author does make known his disgust with the murderer, but that's understandable. Those who are interested in the case should definitely pick this up to augment previous knowledge. I think this book is at times difficult to read because it holds up a mirror to the individual and to society. Sometimes it's ugly, and we won't like what we see, but I think it's important to keep in mind the very worst. It's the only way we'll be able to appreciate the very best. And it'll help dispel the "it won't happen to me" mentality. I give this book 4 stars out of 5. Heavy stuff. And we're going to stick with the killer, or would-be killer. Mentally disturbed protagonist anyway. Fictional this time, so it should be more of a fun ride. I Am Not a Serial Killer by Dan Wells. Till next time, I'm your friendly neighborhood librarian, signing off.